Westbrook Health Services has been supporting the surrounding community since 1949 and is known as an agency that is community-focused, people-driven. As one of West Virginia's 13 comprehensive behavioral health centers, Westbrook provides services to 8 counties throughout the Mountaineer State and became one of the first comprehensive community behavioral health clinics in West Virginia in 2020. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the generous help of the Sisters Health Foundation. This year marks 25 years since the foundation awarded its first grant, and we couldn't be more grateful for their support. Welcome to Studio 2121.
Studio 2121. Today, I will be having a conversation with Brittian Miller. He is our Program Director for our Crisis Response Unit, which we hope to be opening soon, and we'll get into a little bit of discussion about that later. But Brittian, welcome, and I'm happy that you're joining us today. And if you don't mind, can you do a little bit of introduction about yourself?
Absolutely, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Brittian Miller. I am currently the Program Director of the Crisis Response Unit, which I have been since May of last year. We're not currently open yet, but we're getting closer and closer as the days go by. And I mean, that's my position now.
That's exciting. We're hoping to open that soon, but like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about you and what brought you to Parkersburg, where you were born and raised, and Absolutely. If you give us a little bit of background.
I was originally born in Lakeland, Florida. I lived there until I was about 13 years old, raised by my grandparents. And when I turned 13, there was just like some rifts going on down there, and I relocated to Ohio, Danville, Ohio, in the heart of Amish country, which was a huge culture shock because I went from like an area that was very much a melting pot of cultures and things to a town with one stoplight, and Amish buggies were the biggest cultural thing. So I lived there until I graduated in 2006. And I went all over. I went to California for a year. I went to Tennessee for like 6 months. There was some other states in there, I think, that were even briefer, but I was a little bit nomadic. But during all that time, I was, after graduating high school, it was constant addiction. With very brief moments of sobriety. So I was going to a lot of places and doing a lot of things, but getting nothing done. And, getting in trouble with the law, things of misdemeanor levels, things like that. And that's actually how I ended up in Parkersburg. Prior to, what year was that? 2013 was a very rough year for me. And in 2014, I ended up in jail for a couple weeks for disorderly conduct and persisting. And what that means is they let me go. I was acting a fool and they let me go, but I continued to act a fool, so they had to come back. And when I got out, I was homeless, and I didn't want to be homeless. That was like my rock bottom type deal was homelessness. So I was like, whatever I do, I got to stay out of a homeless shelter. So at the time, there was this talk of a free recovery program in Parkersburg, but I wasn't ready yet to commit to anything like that. So when I left jail, I was at the local Walmart and I saw a friend, and I ended up staying with him for 2 months. But drinking took over in that time. I was able to stove it off for like a couple weeks, but within a few months I was back on the street again, and I was like, that free program sounds pretty good. So I came to Parkersburg because I was going to be homeless, and it ended up being at the Latrobe Street Mission in a homeless shelter, which I had no idea it was. So I inadvertently ended up in a homeless shelter anyway.
Wow.
And I stayed in that program for a year. There was probably like 12 of us. It was a brand new. I was the first group through. They don't have it anymore. It was called the Grace Project. Now they have the Key, I think, above. But it was completely different back then. Now they have the kitchen set up, and they've remodeled a lot, but it was very different. But while I was there, I got there June 2014 is when I moved to Parkersburg, and I immediately started coming to Westbrook from there. I got my, I didn't have any state benefits or anything like that until I came here. So I got those because we weren't allowed to work right away. So we needed to have insurance. And in that time, within a month, I was at Westbrook. People would talk to me about this place, and it was like, it's a good place to go. And I was like, came and did my intake, and they had recommended IOP and therapy services to start, and doctor services as well. So I started the IOP, which was great because when you weren't it was good to get away from the mission there for when you couldn't work. It was nice to have hobbies and things to go do. So that was 3 days a week at the time for 4 hours, I believe. And it was nice to get away and talk to people that had similar issues as I did, because not everyone in the Grace Project was there for alcohol or substance use disorder. It was it was mental health, it was anger issues, everything like that.
Right.
So it was nice to meet some peers, and in that they have you do meetings. You have to go to so many. So I started going to different meetings in the area and got plugged into that community. Mm-hmm. And it was great. I've been here ever since, and that was 2014. So I started working at Westbrook in 2015 because as I was going here. Are we allowed to use names of people that we worked with?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kelly Ross back then was case manager.
Yeah.
And she was my case manager.
Okay.
So she was the one helping me, guide me along the way and helping me figure out how to achieve my goals. Mm-hmm. And she was really great and all that. Everyone was just so welcoming, and there was no judgment. Where I'm from, there wasn't anything like Westbrook.
Okay.
There was a small building that was called Mound Builders, I believe. No, the Freedom Center.
This is in Ohio?
This is in Mount Vernon, Ohio.
Okay.
They've since gotten more going there, but until I moved here, I didn't know places like this existed with all the services and things.
Okay.
And that was long before we had the piers and things like that. So I started working here in 2015. And I originally tried to get on at Amity, but I didn't have a car back then, and my sobriety it wasn't quite a year yet, and I think maybe it didn't work out. But what did work out is Tim Bear, who works with the PATH Outreach Program for Homelessness,
right,
saw my name on a resume or application.
Okay.
Was talking to Tim Barnett, who is the division director over that at the time, and they called me in for an interview and asked what could I bring to the table with the homeless outreach, and I was like, well, I live at the homeless shelter, and I know a lot of the individuals we'd be working with. I have a good rapport, and so that's how I got my foot in the door at Westbrook, because I knew I wanted to get in here somehow, and I didn't care at what capacity. I just knew if I got my foot in the door, it could lead to different positions over time.
Yeah, that's interesting because you hit it just right. We've had the PATH grant for a long time, but historically we've only had funding to fund one per position. There was a small window there where we got some additional funding. We were able to bring on a part-time employee, and that happened to be right at the time that you were job seeking. Yeah.
And I became that part-time employee, and I really love that job. Going to the different shelters, house to home in the area. I used to just get on the bus route and just ride the bus all day. And if I saw someone that might, need some help, or if I couldn't locate someone I've been trying to track down, sometimes that was a good avenue. And it was just, you got to be very creative with how you went about things. Yeah. And, they do the point in time count twice a year. And I got to do the abandoned homes. I did a lot on 16th Street was my route, and it was just really neat to get to break into a place but not be breaking the law.
Right.
It was I got my vest on, the cops were, and they knew we were out, and that was a lot of fun. And over the years, we did that with like different organizations and groups. Like I got to one year work with people that were in recovery, also that were in a special program not affiliated with Westbrook, and they came along and I got to work with them, and they were a really fun group.
And we do that point in time count. Is that annually or twice a year?
It's mandatory to do the winter count,
Yeah.
and then the summer count is optional, and we generally do it here at Westbrook.
Yeah. So it's our opportunity to try to evaluate the number of individuals in the community that are homeless and see if some of the programs that we are trying to put in place is making an impact.
A big part of that is it's a census, but a big part of it is we do this form called the SPDAT, and what it is it's a assessment that gauges the likelihood of someone, passing away as a result of homelessness, and that's how they prioritize lists for names for funds. So the highest on the list would get like if a permanent supportive housing opened up or something like that, at the time they were like, okay, we need to keep these people on our radar because they're in bad shape.
Okay.
So it was good to gather that, and if we didn't know about some people that at that time, we might get them on our radar to try to at least let them know, like, we're here, we have these services, and take what you want, but just know we're always here if you need us.
Do you find working with individuals who have experienced homelessness that there is usually some degree of mental illness that is not being addressed, or some past substance use disorder issues?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think the two can go, more often than not, that's what you see, whether it's substance use disorder or mental health or both, but usually it's untreated, and that kind of brings me into like my second job at Westbrook, because my first one was only part-time with PATH, and then another part-time position opened up with permanent supportive housing.
Okay.
We don't currently have that. We gave it back, I believe, to the coalition to end homelessness.
They are now running that program.
Yes. But there was two of us. I had, I believe, 6 homes under my care, and what we did was we found the individuals who were most at risk of passing away as a result of homelessness, and it was a housing first model, so we'd get them housed, and in the hopes that once there's stable living situations, that we can address either the mental health concerns, the physical health concerns, and the substance use disorder. And that was a real fun job.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of things because I was the in-between of the landlord and the renters, and so I was kind of like the house manager. So I did weekly visits, and it's really great. I still see some people that are still involved in the program, and that's been at least 3 years since I've been involved with that, and they're still doing well.
I don't know if you remember or not, but I think it was when you were working in that program, it was the first time we met outside of new hire orientation. You were needing assistance moving a client into an apartment, and we got together in the company truck, and I remember carrying furniture upstairs into an apartment.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that. But it was really a fun job. I got to learn different things and work with like the coalition, and in the different positions I've had over time, you learn a lot of different like regulations and what's appropriate, or like definitions of things according to like the definition of homelessness. It had to be living on not couch surfing basically, and I would never have guessed that. I thought if you were living at a friend's home on their couch, you were homeless, but it's not the case. It's in the shelter or on the streets basically. But now in DD, there's so many more rules and regulations and definitions I'm learning, and it's just you're never going to figure it all out. That's for sure.
So moving from assisting individuals with homelessness, I think your next venture with Westbrook was working on a crisis line. Is that correct?
Well, I stopped doing the PATH.
Okay.
And I was working at I had 2 jobs. I was working at a country club, and I was doing permanent supportive housing. But the country club was kind of getting old, and I was going to school again. And come that summer, there was all these shifts opening up on Crisis Line, and they had a part-time position open. So I was like, well, if I do 2 part-time positions, I could be a full-time worker. And,
right.
And that's how I started getting my, like, 403B started and things like that, retirement. Yep. And because, like I said, I was going to school, but I was going to school for psych so I could get a different job at Westbrook.
Okay.
Like, it was always that I wanted to stay here.
Just doing what you can to improve your position and gain your knowledge and
get the experience.
Yeah,
because that's
absolutely.
The biggest part is experience. So I did Crisis Line. Eventually, I left OVU because it just wasn't conducive to work, and it was expensive at the time. And so I left OVU and went to WVUP. And in that time, we had given the grant for permanent supportive housing back to the coalition, and I just seamlessly went to a full-time position in crisis, on the Crisis Line.
Okay.
And that was one of my favorite jobs here. Out of all of them, that was the most, fun. Like, you didn't know what you were getting into. It could be a very slow, like maybe 1 call, 2 calls, or you could be on the phone from start to finish of your shift. And you never knew what you were going to hear on the other line. And that's how I was able to get through school, though. I was night shift, so I was able to answer calls and do my homework.
Yeah.
And Westbrook was all for it, too, which was what I was really appreciative. Mm-hmm. They would always help me within my growth, whether it be education or in the company. It created, for me, a lot of loyalty on my part.
Yeah. You know, I had a conversation just yesterday about our crisis line, and it was interesting. We always refer to it as the crisis line. For individuals in need can call, and we help bridge the gap to get the services if something's not available immediately. But the conversation progressed. It's really not just a crisis line. It's also, I guess some might consider it a warm line. We have individuals that call that just check in, gives them a person just to talk to help them feel a little bit more stable. I don't know. Could you get into that a little bit?
I'd say from my experience on the crisis line that maybe 95% of calls are not like an at the moment crisis. There's a lot of individuals who call because they don't have anyone to vent to, or they don't have a support system outside of their home, so they would call just to vent. Or I had people that would call me daily and check in, like almost like I do with my family. Yeah. And we were that support for them to get through a lot of tough times. And like I'd say most 95% of my calls were, I got this going on, or I just need to talk to someone, or I don't know why I'm calling, but this is going on. And it's a lot of venting and, running ideas. And my job was just to listen. Right. Try not to give advice or anything like that. But yeah, I'd say 95% are not like, gotta act fast crises.
Yeah, and it's amazing the support that provides to help individuals keep stable, not have to run to the ER because they're panicking about whatever is not going right in their life, and we're able to help keep them calm and bridge the gap between services.
Or recommend the ER if that seems like what's needed. But what I noticed when I left the crisis line and I come back and fill in, people are like, they miss, like, oh my gosh, it's you, and I thought you were gone. It's like, oh, I was, but I'm just filling in, Right. But they miss you, and you worry about, you wonder what's going on with them too, because you develop you're used to talking to someone 3 days a week, and not talk to them for like 3 months. It's weird. Yeah. But in that time, I had already relapsed on alcohol. I know I kind of veered off the substance use part, but when I was on the crisis line, I had relapsed, and I didn't drink at work, and I worked night shift. But when I got off, I would go back to my old ways, and then come in not feeling too great in the evenings, and that's why once I graduated, I picked the job at the CSU. They were hiring for a group facilitator, and my history with recovery, I was like, oh, if you help people, you help yourself. Yeah. Well, I didn't do the other steps prior, the other things I needed to do. Yeah. So I started that job in November of 2018, and that was what led me back into recovery. seeing these people trying, to change their lives, and me sitting there trying to tell them like coping skills and things like that, and then just the guilt of going home and doing what I was doing really bummed me out, and it was starting to really get away from me too, so way beyond my control, to the point where I was calling off more. And what had happened was I started that job in November 2018, right at the beginning of, or the end of January, it was coming to a head of 2019, and I called off like a Wednesday, and I was like, my roommate knew what had happened, and I was like, I gotta do something, and I didn't. I got real motivated for a day, and then it was just goes away, which is common in substance use disorders.
Right.
You got to strike while the iron's hot. But the next week I called off the same day, and I just couldn't come in. I woke up, and I was I felt still like inebriated. And I was like, well, I can't go in, and I just called off last week. And I sat there thinking about it, and I was like, maybe it's time to just come forward and see what I can do. And so I called my boss at the time, told him that I had relapsed, and I needed to go get some help. And right from then on, it wasn't like we got to worry about. It wasn't like we got to figure out how to cover your shift or anything. It was like, you do whatever you need to do, and we'll be here if you need anything. And my roommate, who works at Westbrook, and all the people that I've grown close to, helped me find a place that I could go. And I went. That was like a Wednesday. I think I went that weekend to a facility in Virginia.
Okay.
For 30-day stay. And just to backtrack a little bit, I remember in the CSU when people would ask me about my sobriety date, and it just felt so bad because I always made it up, and it was terrible because
it was during your relapse time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where all that guilt came from. Because when I first got sober, I moved here and I had nothing. I moved here with a duffel bag. I was in a homeless shelter. That was an easy rock bottom. It wasn't hard to figure out that was a rock bottom. But when it happened, when I worked at the CSU, I had a stable housing, which could have gone if I would have continued on that path.
Right.
But I didn't have to lose everything. Like I still had stuff going on, and I brought that up. Because it bothered me. I brought it up in one of my therapy groups in the treatment center I was at. I was like, I don't know if I suffered enough this time to get sober and hit my rock bottom. I don't think I was there. And she said something that stuck with me. She said, rock bottom is when you decide to stop digging. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm done. I don't want to dig anymore. Yeah. I don't want to end back up there because I knew what it could lead to. Yeah. So I was there for 30 days in Virginia, and I came back, and I was worried also about going back to the CSU, because we see a lot of people who are in the same boat I was like a month prior. They're coming in for detox and things like that, and but it was like the best thing that could have happened to me. Like I think a lot of that was ego at the time. I didn't want people to know I was having issues.
Yeah, because you're trying to help them, so...
Yeah, but when I got back, I was just honest from the start, and I think people responded well to that, and they knew I knew what they were going through, and I did that for, I think, a year at the CSU as a group facilitator, and then... from then, there was a position that opened up on the crisis team, who do the on-call and the walk-ins at Westbrook. Someone comes in requesting crisis, you do consults and you do all the commitments.
So now, instead of the individuals who are calling in and you're talking through the phone, you're now meeting them in the community and providing supports there.
Yeah, a lot of... the adult crisis, that's a mobile crisis that's starting now, is when I was doing it, I was like, man, I'd heard about things like that, and I'd be like, that'd be fun to go with the police to a call and things like that. But most of it was go to the hospital, or you get a call, it's like someone's not quite acting right, on so and so street. Can you? And we'd go by and be like, you all right?
Yeah.
See if someone needs any help like that. But that also got me back with the crisis team, which were my friends from the crisis line.
Right.
And I really enjoyed that job. Because, like, again, it's with most of the gigs here, it's like you never know what you're going to get from day to day, so it's constantly exciting. Mm-hmm. And it can be overwhelming at times, but it's worth it when someone, says thank you, or you see someone like a month later and they're completely turned around from where they were when you saw them at, like, maybe their lowest point.
Sure.
And
so let me ask you this. What, just for other individuals who may be struggling and don't realize it, when did you realize that you had problems with alcohol and you weren't able to control it and that you needed help?
I was a late bloomer in my drinking career. I didn't really drink or anything in high school, but when I went to college is when it really started. Mm-hmm. And after my second semester of college, I recognized that there was a problem because, I always assumed, Animal House, things like that, movies. I thought college was where you went to, party. Right. And then I had friends, peers, telling me that I was a little out of hand, and I didn't expect that. Mm-hmm. Being at college, I thought this is what we're supposed to do.
Right.
Apparently not. They ended up asking me not to come back.
Oh, wow.
Because of academic probation. Mm-hmm. And we had a program house, which on campus that was about sports pride. And, we didn't go to a single game. It was an excuse to have parties, and we got kicked out of that, and then I just, maybe don't come back. I was like, that's fair. So that was 21 years old. I knew I had an issue, and then when I was 22, it was the Super Bowl. For some reason, I always get sober. It was February 1st. I always get sober in February.
After you get through the holidays?
Yeah, I think I push it too hard at those times, and then it catches up to me. But I was 22. I wasn't going to drink that day, I told myself. And I ended up at the hospital with thinking I was having a heart attack. Had to go get my family. They didn't know anything about my drinking because I stayed away, to take me to the hospital. And they did all these tests on me, and I really thought I was dying. And the doctor came in and goes, we checked everything, and the only thing I can see is that your liver enzymes are really high. And he goes, how much do you drink? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't, because I was going through alcohol withdrawal.
Okay.
Really bad DTs.
Which can be very dangerous.
Yes. Alcohol and benzodiazepines like Xanax are the only two substances that when you come off of can kill you. Mm-hmm. And I'd been drinking straight for 2 years, and it didn't dawn on me until they were talking to me that, I thought that was something that would happen when in my 50s or 60s, but no, it was 22 years old, it was affecting me now.
Wow.
And that scared me really bad, and they kept me in the hospital for 3 days, because everything was out of whack. I don't remember the first, day and a half, because they kept me sedated. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was not fun to talk to on this first day.
Yeah. Were you combative?
That's not me at all. Mm-hmm. But I don't remember it, but I think being on the Ativan too, and cranky anyway, that didn't help.
Yeah.
So I did that for 3 days, and the day I got out, I went to that Freedom Center, that one, and I had a counselor there. And I did that for a little while. I tried to go to different recovery type meetings, but it wasn't for me. I didn't follow up. I let fear of ending up back in the hospital be my motivation not to drink. But in that time, I was like, well, drink. I set this bar. As long as I don't drink, I'm good.
Yeah.
But, I can try anything else.
So you weren't fully vested in recovery at that time?
No, I not even a little bit. I was white-knuckling it, so to speak. And within 6 months, I didn't drink again for a year, but within 6 months, I found other avenues, different, marijuana, things like that, because in my mind, it's I'm not going to end up in jail, which I could have, looking back with the legality of it, I very well could have ended up in jail, but I would do that type of stuff. And at the time, sadly, they were still prescribing benzos pretty regularly when people got out of like detox and things. So I got hooked on those as well, which nowadays it's not the same. They don't push those on or give those to you as a cure-all like they used to, but
Right.
I basically traded my alcohol for a pill or Xanax and Ativan and marijuana addiction.
So basically, you just traded one addiction for another.
Yeah, some people like to call it like just switching seats on the Titanic. You know, the ship's still going down, you're just in a different spot.
Yeah.
And, you know, I did that for 6 months, and eventually it's like, with a lot, this happens a lot in addiction, in your mind it goes, if you go a period of time without using the substance, your mind goes, well, maybe you don't have a problem. Maybe that was a fluke. I better try it again.
Yeah.
So I remember it, the exact night, it was when LeBron James first left the Cavs to go to Miami. And me and my buddy were watching that. I was house sitting, and I was like, I'm going to try, you know, I haven't drank in a year, I'm going to try it. And I was about to move to California, and I was going to wine country, so I also better check to see if I can hack it out there.
Right.
So that first time drinking in over a year, end up falling asleep outside in the rain, computer's ruined, I had it outside listening to music, and I was like, oh, that wasn't a good idea, but that, you know, phenomenon of craving took over, so there was no going back. I was off to the races again, basically making up for lost time, and I lived in California for a year, but if I wouldn't have drank, I might have still been out there, because drinking sent me back home quick.
It's interesting. You know, I hear stories all the time, and you know, it's true that people have certain triggers, and they have to learn those triggers and manage those triggers when they're in recovery. But it sounds like to me it really wasn't a trigger for you. It was just I just need to try it and see if this really is a problem.
Yeah, there's a saying that your addiction's out in the parking lot doing push-ups, just waiting for you. And yeah, it wasn't a trigger. It was just time. And not taking care, you know, getting involved in recovery and taking care of, you know, the deeper, like, what hole am I trying to fill with that alcohol? That type of need. And alcohol is just easier. I can fill this hole with alcohol and be done with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a lot of failed attempts from 2012 to when I got here in 2014. Most of it was like, I never really wanted to quit. It was that I wanted to get people off my back at that time. Like, if I was having relationship issues, I'd be like, oh, I'll never drink again. Maybe go a few days and then be right back to it. And it wasn't until I got kicked out of the last place I was in because I worked night shift, and my roommates worked day shift, so they didn't see me. They didn't like my drinking, but I was easy to hide it. But one morning I came home, and my buddy had a quart of apple pie moonshine. There's no hiding that. I guess I drank the whole thing and got in a fight with all my roommates that afternoon, and that was the last straw. They're like, you gotta go. And I was like, I can't. That's when I surrendered. It was like, I can't do this. Keep doing this. I got nothing. And I called up someone that had gone to school in this area, and she drove me down and got me into that recovery program at the time at Latrobe Street Mission.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So fast forward, you ended up in Virginia that you talked about before and went through that 30-day program, and I believe things are going well for you from that perspective. So could you help someone else who might be struggling to stay in recovery? What are some of the things you do to help manage and help avoid going back down that path again?
Well, for me, you know, you can get complacent. That's what happened to me after I moved down here and I relapsed. I got complacent, and what I did was I left my the recovery community. I started school back up, and I was basically isolated out at OVU, and they had these dorms for the older kids, and they were off on their own a bit, and I stayed in there, and I was just unsupervised by myself, and I disconnected with everyone and everything I had learned, and I focused on school. You know, they say, like, school is my number one priority. I went and I got straight A's that first semester, but I got bored and complacent. And they say anything you put over your recovery, like importance-wise, is the first thing you'll lose.
Okay.
And so I think me putting school over that, and then eventually I got kicked out of... I didn't get kicked out of there, actually. Yeah. I just left because I was shamed.
Okay.
They were going to let me stay there. They let me stay there over the summer, and it was free of charge. I mean, they really helped me out because they knew where I'd come from. But that summer I was in my room by myself, and when I didn't work and things, and I was just messing up. And I think they would have helped me, honestly, if I'd have asked for it. But I failed a class that semester, and it was just night and day. And I think they would have helped me, but I just left. And it worked. It was really good for me though, because that's how I got plugged into with my roommate now, who I've lived with for 5 years. 3 of which have been sober. 2 were not. We're a little rocky. Yeah. But I try to look at the good things that my addiction has done for me. It's opened up a lot of doors, but there were things that I had to do and surrender to get those opportunities. And for now, I have a big support network, and my motivation is, trying to help other people. I got my brother down to this area, and he has similar issues as me, and, I've been trying to plug him into the things I know about to get help, and, helping others is the best way to help yourself. Okay. And that gives me a lot of joy, and it helps, seeing him, recover and seeing that light back in his eyes. That does it for me. That's my motivation, and doing that with other people.
Helps keep you focused and in tuned to your recovery.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I do some service work as well. That gives me I make these commitments, and it keeps me accountable. Okay. Yeah. I have to be. I can't. Well, it's like I can't mess up because I got to do this, and that all month. And right. Keeping that stuff in the forefront is always. It's been working for 3 years. So.
Well, that's awesome, Brittian. And so you were able to get your degree.
Yeah, I got my Regents, Bachelor of Arts, and with an emphasis in psychology, and that was just so I could work at the CSU. I needed that emphasis to have that background for the job requirements. Right. And which I guess I could have graduated a year early if I wouldn't have done that, but I'm glad I did because I learned a lot, and I really do love mental health and. The different working with people with different diagnoses and like schizoaffective, schizophrenia, bipolar. It's just very interesting to see how those things affect people and to see what, like when someone's doing good and then versus when they're not taking their medications or following up with therapy. Because I look at taking care of your mental health the exact same as taking care of your substance use disorder. There's things you have to do. You got to take your medicine. You got to, come up with healthy ways to fill your time. Or you just go back into, isolation, things like that. Or at least that's what I do. Right. I'll isolate quicker than anything. Yeah. But with my commitments and things like that, I can't. So I make those begrudgingly sometimes, but it's the best thing for me. Yeah.
So I noticed on your hand you have the tattoos, Hold Fast. Is that something that's special to you to help you with your recovery?
Yeah, to me that, I got this tattoo when I lived in Tennessee. I was working at a factory, and I was like, I basically told myself, this is what I'm doing now. This is like 2012 and 13. This is what I'm doing now. I'm getting some hand tattoos because I'm not ever going to be in a professional setting. Little did I know. Yeah. But, Westbrook's never judged me for that at all. Right. But yeah, I got this, it's an old sailor term. Okay. You said hold fast, when oncoming ships were coming to take over, or big storms, hold on to the sail line so that you don't let go. Basically, to me, it means don't give up when, this weather gets rough. Yeah. Hold fast and you'll make it through. That was the most painful tattoo I've ever gotten. I also have, like, the Serenity Prayer on my arm. which I got not sober, ironically, but it's something that I hated it when I didn't, when I was messing up, but now that I'm not, I like it again.
Yeah, that's good. So let's talk a little bit about the newest position that you are with Westbrook. We hired you to be our program director for our crisis response unit. It's a unit that's going to be a 6-bed unit for helping individuals in the intellectual and developmentally disabled population when they are in a acute crisis. We work to stabilize them, to help return them back to their residence. So tell me how you got involved with that program and what you hope to do to help individuals.
Well, ever since I've been at Westbrook, I've always, I don't know, maybe in general, I've just always looked for the next thing because I can get complacent. So one day my roommate and I were sitting there and, I'd been thinking about what do I want to do? Do I want to go back to school right now? Do I want to see if there's any other jobs at Westbrook? And she's like, oh, there's this program director position. And I was reading about it. I have worked with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but never, through waiver program or the guidelines that the state sets. I've just done little bits here and there, and I was interested in it. And I worked at the CSU, so I knew what a inpatient setting was like, but on an unlocked unit. So I was like, oh, I'm going to go for it, because in my mind I thought, even if I didn't get the position, at least people higher than me would know that I was looking at a management position.
Right.
So, I prepared. Before I had my interview, I called up the only other CRU in the state I had found online, and they sent me some documents and things, and I brought that up in my interview, and I think that showed them that I knew how to look for things, because I can do that very well. If I don't know the answer, I'll find it.
Well, it shows some initiative too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so I did my interview, and they asked me to come back. I was like, okay, that's good. I had a second interview, and in my second one, they had me they blindsided me, I'll be honest. They had me go to the back and read this small group thing. It was a group. I can't remember the exact specifics of the group, but basically they would have me read it and go facilitate a group with the people interviewing me. And I guess up until then, I can be rather monotone, but I like doing groups, so I didn't feel weird about it or anything, and that was my history. I did groups for over a year at CSU, and very comfortable with it. So I did that, and I thought it went really well, and little did I know, there's cameras on there. The division director, Heidi, had seen it and liked what I did, and I got the job. I was very surprised. I was very happy, but then it was oh, now you got to get to business.
Right.
So it's been really fun so far. We've had some hiccups with, COVID has slowed, because we were still under construction, and COVID really slowed the supply chain down of materials. I think I waited 12 weeks for doors. I ordered appliances in June, and some of them didn't come in until last October. It was just months of waiting and hurry up and wait.
Right.
And now, we're coming to that finish line and trying to get people hired, and that's been the hurdle now, is the hiring. But I think Westbrook is doing really great with, we have a retention bonus now. We have, hiring bonuses and attendance bonus. We have so many different things that I think we're definitely competitive, but still having issues with people setting up interviews with me and then not showing up. And I guess it's like that all over. I talk to people throughout the community, and they have the same problems. Had a guy from a construction company come to look at something the other day for the unit, and somehow we got on that, and he's in the same boat.
Yeah.
So hopefully that stops eventually. We hung flyers up yesterday all over town, and I think I'm going to go on the bus route and just start hanging them on all the buses, because Parkersburg doesn't have very many actual bus stops, but I hung them up there where they did, and I think I'm just going to go on the buses, put them all around, and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited. Like I said, I never had worked with this population specifically, but now that I've worked in our residential homes. I've really have a fondness for the population.
So with the services that we'll be doing from our CRU, how do you think it will benefit the community?
Well, working on the crisis team, I saw a lot of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities be committed for things that, in my mind, weren't committable. It was based off of behaviors from the diagnosis. Now, not to say there's cases where that is appropriate, because it is. If there's a dual diagnosis, and let's say someone has Down syndrome and maybe schizoaffective disorder, if the schizoaffective disorder is what's causing the disruption in the person's life, then yeah, that's appropriate to get treated for, or possibly committed if that's what's causing someone to be a danger to themselves or others. But that's not the case with a lot of the commitments with that population. So what we will be is a stopping a point of service for people that need a little extra help than what they can get in an outpatient setting or within whatever their community has. And then not go to a state hospital where it's not appropriate a fit. So when someone comes to us, we will incorporate, doctor services, medication management. My role, along with program director, is also the behavioral support professional, which I'm currently, in classes doing that. Later today, I'll be working on my homework for that. But I'll be working with the individual's treatment teams, coming up with new ideas or things that we might be doing there, or programs that we may be using that they can incorporate on their individual, treatment plans and things like that from when they leave. Also, we'll have 24-hour nursing to help with, making sure there's medication compliance and things like that. But it's very interesting. It's a whole different. It's similar, but it's very different at the same time compared to what we would see at the crisis response unit,
right?
Which very much gets confused with the crisis. I just confused it.
Yeah.
The crisis stabilization unit as.
Well, some people use the term CRU for what we term CSU. So
yes.
It does. For us, our crisis stabilization unit is for the SUD and mental health population, and our crisis response units for the IDD population.
But I, without a doubt, know we'll be getting referrals for the. It's just going to happen. It's one letter, and crisis is in both. But no, I'm really excited. I hired a nurse finally. I just interviewed another nurse. I offered, and we're waiting to hear back. So we're getting there. Flack came in this week and looked over, and he's like, it looks great. So I'm very excited. I know my supervisor and I have done a lot of work with getting the building filled up with furniture and things like that, and it's like we're ready.
Right. So hopefully we'll have an open house soon. So for those of you, just pay attention to our Facebook page, and we'll get information out if you're interested in coming and touring the facility. Brittian, it's been great talking with you today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I do have a couple of final questions for you to wrap up. I am curious, so what motivates you?
You asked me to think about that, and I did. And I think what motivates me is that I'm just never completely satisfied. I always am looking around for what's next, or what could be done better in my personal life. That I got sober, and then I got this position, and then in my mind I was like, this is going to be a lot of stress. So I need to get my health better. So I started losing weight. I'm down 30 pounds now because I just didn't want to take on all the stress and then have it affect my health negatively.
Right. Yeah.
So I started that, and I did that for I've been doing that for almost a year now, with struggles with holidays and things, and then that wasn't good enough. So now, through our new corporate membership with the Y, I got a membership to the Y, and I've been going there 3 to 4 days a week now, and trying to get that, and then I'm sure that's not going to be enough before too long. So, you know, I just stay hungry. I don't know. Nothing's ever good enough. But it's only for me. It's not, I don't treat other people that way. Like, but yeah, I always think there's something I could be doing better.
Well, yeah, I think you brought up a great point too. It's I don't know, people sometimes don't realize it, but your physical health can have a huge with what your mental health is doing. I mean, it can have a huge effect. Then vice versa.
Well, if you suffer from, like, let's say depression, you know, and you can like do the therapy and you can take the medicine, but something that you can add in that, definitely, I mean, there's proven studies that, you know, exercise lowers cortisol, the stress hormone, and yeah, it's definitely beneficial.
So how do you deal with stress?
Well, I have very many different coping skills I've learned over the years. It depends on the day and what I've been dealing with. Sometimes, you know, if I had a very rough day and I need to get out of my head, I will go home and just start playing like a half hour to an hour of video games just to refocus and like just not think about what I was just dealing with, and get out of my own way. Other times, you know, I reach out to people in my recovery community, or I go try to, you know, help someone else. There's baths. Baths are big for me with like that essential oil stuff. Yeah, that's very helpful. Music. Now lifting, going to the gym is very helpful. It's hard to, you know, be in your head when you're trying to deadlift. Right. You just got to focus on what you're doing. Yeah. And those are my main ones right now. But yeah, the video games or reading really helps me just get out of my head. Yeah. Definitely. Breathing in the moment. Yeah. I taught stuff on, or groups on coping skills. I know a lot and I use a lot.
Yeah. Well, you know, that probably helps with the teaching when you practice it yourself.
Well, if you have some frame of reference to what you're talking about, I feel, or like some practical use of it, I feel like people can see that, and, you know, this isn't just, he's not just blowing smoke, he does this too, and you know, more weight to it. Right.
So last question, what do you love about Westbrook?
Honestly, that's an easy question. I love the, you know, like family atmosphere. Some of my closest friends are here now. You know, I met them here, and I love that Westbrook is always trying, you know, they really, like, worked with me when I was struggling with my addiction, and, you know, I never felt like, there's a stigma with addiction, and I never felt that when I came out about what was going on with me. It was not like, oh, what about it? It was, how can we help you? And, you know, that meant the world to me, and not a lot of places would do that. Or if you told someone you were struggling, like, here's a drug test, if you can't pass it, you're done. Right. And I never felt that. And so that's what I love about Westbrook, the family atmosphere, and I truly think, you know, everyone is here to try to help and lift each other up.
Yeah, great. Thanks again, Britt.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.